making sure. All right, great. Thanks everyone for joining. First, good morning, and hope everyone had a nice holiday weekend. I'm going to keep my camera off in a minute. I got stung by a couple of my bees in my face, so my face is rather swollen. So to spare everyone, I'm going to turn off my camera here. A couple of housekeeping items here. I want to remind everyone to please mute their lines unless you're speaking. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to access that and email it out to you guys afterwards. We'll also post it probably on the northeastdiesel.org website as well. Feel free to use the chat function as we go to ask questions, but I will ask that hold off to ask questions if you want to ask during the meeting with your computer. You can ask at the end of the presentation. We'll have a time for Q&A. So I think that's about it here. So I wanted to briefly introduce you to Lynn Hamgen. She is the Air Division Director for Region 1, and Lynn's going to be providing some opening remarks for us before we get the program started. So you can take it away, Lynn.
Thanks, Gary. I think you can all hear me okay. If not, raise your hand. I want to thank you. I really want to thank you all for coming today to join today's call. And through the new Clean School Bus program, we're going to offer a total of $5 billion over the next 5 years. I can't believe that number either, but it did pass Congress and it's real, to fund the replacement of existing school buses with either low or zero emission school buses. So as most of you are already aware, probably that's why you're here, the first round of funding opened May 20th. And nationally, we're going to offer rebates on this first round of $500 million to replace diesel buses with electric buses and/or buses powered by compressed natural gas and propane. Currently, roughly 95% of all school buses in Massachusetts are powered by diesel. I didn't know that figure. Thank you, Gary, for digging that out for me. And that's quite a bit of diesel over the next several years that we can begin to work to replace. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law's Clean School Bus program represents a great moment for communities to help improve the quality of the air quality for our children and others that are exposed to these emissions. Oops, I'm getting a little bit of feedback there, sorry.
Could everyone please mute their lines if you're not speaking? Thank you.
By going to these cleaner alternative fuel buses and electric school buses. We'll also be working to ensure that the benefits of the program are seen across all of New England, and we'll be prioritizing the funding for underserved communities. We encourage you to complete an application by August 19th, and we ask you to treat this presentation today as the beginning of an ongoing dialogue between yourselves and EPA as we collaborate on this new exciting opportunity. On that note, I want to underscore that we welcome all questions and feedback that you may have, and you can ask after we do the presentation today. This is what this forum is designed for. We'll all be here at the end to answer your questions, and also if you have any suggested improvements either on the program in the future or on today's webinar, we welcome those as well. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Gary, back at you so you can provide an overview of the program. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Lynn. Appreciate it. All right. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Gary Rennie. I work at in the air quality branch at EPA Region 1 here in Boston. I work specifically on the DERA program and, of course, this Clean School Bus program now. So I'll give you I'm gonna run through an overall overview of the program. There's going to be a lot of information that I present, but these slides will be shared later on, and also the recording will be available as well. Again, please ask questions in the chat, or if you want to speak, you hold your questions till the end. We do have a lot of content to go to, but I hope it's going to be informative for everyone. Maybe some of you are already on the webinars that EPA has hosted, but this will be another overview, and then I'll go into some application tips and things like that. So moving along here, here's the sort of the agenda. What I'll speak to, an overview, program highlights. I'll go through the timeline. Lynn mentioned a little bit already. Go through who is an eligible applicant and who are the prioritized applicants that we're going to speak to. Some of the replacement guidelines, the funding amounts per bus, application process, some of the requirements, and conclusion. We'll also hear from Jade Liu from Massachusetts Clean Energy Center on a program that they have during this program. And we may have a survey at some point afterwards as well. So moving along here. So here's, the overview. Many of you are well aware. This was part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, $5 billion over the next 5 years. Will likely go even further than that if we can't get all the money out in time, but we hope to. It's a great opportunity. These replacements will produce either zero or low tailpipe emissions compared to the older diesel predecessors. These upgrades are funded under the program will result in cleaner air on the bus, in the loading areas, and in the communities in which they serve. And also, not only a benefit for the students riding in the bus, but also the bus drivers themselves and anyone, in and around schoolyards as well. So this is the first opportunity under this program is the Clean School Bus Rebate Program. There will be subsequent funding opportunities after this, but this first sort of round is going to be strictly on a lottery-based rebate. The next round would likely be the end of this year or early next year, but we'll get to that in a bit here. So, how much money are we talking about? With the overall $5 billion. Well, it's going to be this first round of rebates is EPA is putting forward $500 million, making available. Roughly, half of that, so $250 million, will be going towards zero emissions buses, and then roughly $250 million will be going towards clean school buses. And what we mean by clean school buses are zero emission or propane and or CNG. We don't have biofuels as part of the program, this current program, and there aren't many hydrogen buses, so we're strictly focusing on zero emission and like all electric and or propane or CNG. I'll go into this. The school districts applying directly for funds may only submit one application to replace up to 25 buses. I'll go into that a little later. It's just a little intro there. So here's the timeline. As many of you know, the program opened on May 20th. It's going to be open for roughly 90 days, closing on August 19th. So in the next few months are pretty critical to get your information together. Once we receive the applications, we'll begin the selection process. Pretty much immediately or very soon thereafter that the program closes, EPA will notify the applicants of the selection status. We hope to do it within 60 days of the close of the program. Once you get notified of your selection, say you are chosen, then you can proceed with purchasing your new buses. And I'll go into that in more detail later on in this presentation. You submit payment request forms up until next April or so, and then you have until October of 2024 to actually you take the new bus, scrap the old bus, and then submit the closeout form that officially closes the application for you. So that's a pretty aggressive timeline, but we think it's pretty manageable. Hoping that supply chain issues and things like that will cooperate. So the eligible applicants. We're looking at state and local government entities responsible for, one, providing bus service to one or more public school systems, or two, the purchase of school buses. There's also nonprofit school transportation associations that are eligible, Indian tribes and tribal organizations, and also eligible contractors. I'll go into the details of each one of these. State and local government entities. That we're looking at, entities that provide bus service, including public schools districts. This doesn't apply to us really. DC, Puerto Rico. That's just the breadth of where this program reaches. Public charter schools, are eligible. There are some requirements there, and I'll go into that. And most, as we know, most state governmental entities are not eligible because most state agencies do not, own their own fleets. There are a couple, I believe, in North Carolina and elsewhere, but primarily in, Massachusetts, we don't have state government entities that own their fleets. Indian tribes, I mentioned that. Nonprofit school associations, transportation associations, and then this is the one that everyone's who is an eligible contractor. So for-profit, not-for-profit, or non-profit entities that have the capacity to, 1, sell clean or zero-emission school buses or related charging or fueling infrastructure to school bus owners, or 2, arrange financing for such a sale. I'll go into the lease loans or lease-to-own agreements a little later as well. But I'm going to give you a couple examples here. Many people ask, so, who is eligible and how is it going to work? Private school bus fleets cannot apply directly for funding under the program. However, any of the eligible applicants that I just mentioned can enter into a contractual arrangement with a private fleet that owns and operates buses to replace buses that serve a public school district. So here's the examples that I talked about. I have 2 of them here. You read this from left to right, top to bottom. So a bus dealer, Yellow Bus Sales, they can apply to replace buses owned by this private fleet, Safety First Bus Company. The old buses are identified as serving Washington County School District. So the bus dealer must list the private fleet and the school district in the application. So Yellow Bus Sales will apply. If they get selected, lower left, if they get selected, they'll pass those funds to the private fleet. So the funds get passed to the actual bus owner. The new buses are to serve Washington County School District for at least 5 years, and this is in the statute. That's one example. I know I'm going through these fairly quickly, but the second example would be a school district that applies directly for the funds that are owned for the buses that are owned by the private fleet, Safety First Bus Company. So say the Washington County School District is chosen, is selected, then they would pass the funds to the bus company, and that again that fleet, that bus company would provide those buses. They would have to serve that Washington County School District for at least 5 years. So those are 2 of the examples that we think are going to be the most common. The prioritized applicants. The bill allows EPA to prioritize certain applicants. We really want to focus on those communities that have been historically underserved in years past. We're talking about remote communities, low income. I'll go through the list here, but we also, EPA thinks by doing this it's more equal prioritization for school districts that meet one or more the prioritization criteria. It also ensures like a broad geographic distribution of these funds. I'll go through the list. I don't know, many of you have seen it, but so these are the criteria. Number 1, and you can be any one of these, will meet the prioritization. So if you're a school district or a high need school district that's listed on the SAPI index, and that's the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates program for 2022 as having 20% or more students living in poverty. You can look that up. We provide that information in the program guide. There's a link to it. School districts not listed in the SAPI, including most charter schools, they are eligible as long as they self-certify as having 20% or more students living in poverty. The third bullet there doesn't apply. Our rural school districts are eligible or prioritized rather. They are under the National Center for Education Statistics. All this information can be looked up, and we also have a spreadsheet of this information as well that lists all these communities that are either rural, remote, or rural distant, and those are prioritized in this program, as well as tribal schools receive priority. So here's the list of prioritized school districts in Massachusetts. Quite a few of them. Again, these lists. Some people may have a question of why isn't my district on here, or it is really all based on that SAPE data or the remote and distant criteria. So say it's 20%. The poverty rate is 20% above for children. If you're at 19%, your community will not be, your district will not be listed here as a priority district. So it's really, cut and dry at that 20% for that criteria. And again, all that information is listed as a link in the program guide. So the Excel version of that, you can look at the city and the prioritization criteria that each district meets. So whether or not they're SAPE or whether or not they're distant or remote or et cetera. That's all available. And these are, the ones that we're focusing on that we hope to get applications from a lot of these school districts through this program. So the replacement guidelines. Buses eligible for replacement must be 2010 or older, diesel powered, and they will be scrapped as part of the program. If a fleet does not have any eligible 2010 or older diesel school buses and is requesting zero emission school bus replacements, they can either scrap the 2010 or older non-diesel bus, or if they don't have any 2010 or older buses, they can scrap, sell, or donate a 2011 or newer internal combustion engine. So the idea here is, there is still some value in a newer bus. They are still cleaner, 2011 or newer. So if a community really wants to go to electric, which we hope they do, they can choose to either scrap, sell, or donate that newer bus that still has some emission benefits from the after treatment devices on it, and the life left of the engine. So that's the idea there. More sort of guidelines. It has to be a class 3 or above, which is 10,001 pounds or more. So this pretty much runs the gamut for school buses. If there's any questions, you can look up in the program guide what's eligible. But this pretty much covers most of the buses used for transportation for students. The bus must be operational at the time of application. This means that it must be fully functional. It has to be, everything has to be operating, and it should be registered at the time as well. It has to provide bus service to a public school district for at least 3 days a week on average during 2021-22 school year. We also are taking into account COVID-related school closures. So that may affect these, which we'll look into with documentation, but that's just the minimum usage requirement for the buses. So the new buses, as I mentioned, they have to be battery electric, zero emission, CNG or propane. They must be EPA certified, 2021 year or newer. I mentioned the 10,001 pounds or more. Not be ordered prior to receiving official notification of selection from EPA. So you can't hope that you'll get chosen for the program and order your bus now, and then once you get chosen, you send in that payment request, and that's not eligible. You cannot order any buses until you are notified by EPA. The bus also must be purchased. It cannot be leased or leased to own. It can be financed like a conventional loan, but it cannot be leased, and it can't be a lease to own agreement. The new bus replacement must serve the school district again for at least 5 years from the date of delivery. I know this is it may lead to some issues, especially Massachusetts having 70% of their buses contracted. But this is in the statute, and that is just a requirement of the program and how they wrote the statute. Meet federal safety standards. I don't want to go into all that. The third bullet, not included an unvented diesel passenger heater. These are the heaters that the small diesel heaters that can warm the cabin of the bus. They are possible to have as long as they're properly vented, is what this means. So you can still have one in the cab, but it needs to be properly vented if it's not powered by the electric motor itself. You can't stack funds, so you can't stack other federal funds with federal funds. So this is, you can use, other monies available that you may have, but you have to make sure that they're not passed through funds, that they didn't originate from federal funds. Also, a lot of people ask whether or not the Volkswagen trust funds are eligible, and they are if it's number 3 on the mitigation action, eligible mitigation action. The DERA option, number 10, for that is not eligible. So those funds under the DERA option are not eligible to be stacked with these clean school bus funds. And moving on here, so what is the funding amount? Everyone asks, how much am I getting from my bus? Well, if you're one of the priority school districts that I mentioned that falls into one of those criteria, the SAPE, the remote, tribal, you're requesting a zero emission, say, class 7 plus a standard school bus, you can get up to $375,000, which we think will cover, pretty much the cost of the bus. We will not give you more than that, so up to 375. If it comes in less than that, say you get one for 350, you'll get 350,000 for that bus, whatever it is on the invoice, up to 375. It depends on also. So that those are priority if you fall on the priority list. If you're outside the priority list, you're still eligible to apply, but you just get a lesser amount. So in this case, 250,000, the lower left, if you're not a priority area. And then it also depends on the type of fuel, right? So a CNG class 7, you're getting $45,000 towards the purchase if you're in a priority area. And you're getting $30,000 if you're not in a priority school district. So that's how to read that. Infrastructure. So this is, a big part of this program. EPA will fund up to $20,000 per bus for the infrastructure, for the pedestal and some of the equipment attached to that, if you're in a priority area. If you're not a priority school district, you will get $13,000 per bus for the charging infrastructure. And I'll go into that in a little more detail here. So EPA will pay for, or the eligible expense, I should say, is from the electric panel. So the customer side, not the utility side. So from the electric panel to the charging unit to the electric bus, those are all eligible expenses. One thing I want to stress here is also eligible would be, if you want to hook up a couple of different charging units. So the funds that are required to lay the conduit between the charging units, so on the right-hand side, those are eligible costs as well under this program. This all falls under your the electric bus replacement costs. So this will all be taken out of that and or the infrastructure cost. But anything from the electric meter to the grid is not covered. That will be covered by other funds, and that you have to work with your utility on, which there are a lot of incentives. I wanted to briefly mention that there's a program that the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center is running, Mass CEC, and I think Jade, if you're on, if you want to give a quick couple minutes on your program here, you can have the floor.
Great, thanks so much, Gary. Yeah, hi all, I'm Jade. I'm the program manager at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, and I'm here to talk about an upcoming program we have called the Accelerating Clean Transportation School Bus Funding Program. And really the main takeaway here is that we're designing this program to be complementary to the EPA Clean School Bus Program, and we are focusing on providing technical assistance formally through the program, and we're also really happy to help folks like outside of a formal funding engagement. So generally, if you have questions about school bus electrification, we've done a couple projects in the past. We're happy to help any way we can. So for the program itself, we're hoping to hire a couple teams of technical experts. One one chunk of funding is going to go towards EV bus purchases and deployment. So the idea there is to demonstrate pathways for full fleet electrification. So this might be like a plus up on the EPA Clean School Bus funding. So you could get, EPA Clean School Bus funding rebates, and then our funding would maybe provide more money for the infrastructure and then help with the electrification planning, which can be one of the sort of hardest things to manage in this process. And then the second sort of tranche of funding will go towards a team of consultants that will provide electrification road mapping services to school bus fleets. So for both of these, we're definitely wanting to engage with third-party contractors. Obviously, that's a big part of the market in Massachusetts. So please do come to us with their contact information, and we would really love to talk to sort of all types of school bus fleet owners. And again, the idea with number 2 is to provide these folks with a roadmap for electrification that they can follow for the years to come. And then, yeah, our prioritizations are aligned with the EPA prioritizations. And then again, the point on the partnerships. So please do email us if you're interested or have any questions. Again, this program is opening later this summer. We're hoping to have the technical assistance available, like formal technical assistance available sometime in June or July. And then we'll be opening up the applications for the actual school bus fleets a little bit later. But before then, we're really happy to answer questions and just keep everyone in the loop on the program rollout.
Great, thanks, Jade. Yeah, again, you can ask questions in the chat or just save them to the end, and we can go through them. We will have plenty of time for Q&A. But yeah, Mass CEC, they're working sort of collaboratively with Region 1 and with some of the outreach, and also with this program here that's sort of running in concert with ours. So feel free to reach out to Jade and Mass CEC for further questions on that and how they could maybe help bring electric buses to hopefully your area, your remote area, or wherever it may be. Wanted to quickly jump back into the application process here. So this is really important. Applicants, must submit online. They have to have an active SAM.gov entity registration. So as many of you know, we're going, EPA and other federal agencies are going away from the DUNS numbering system, and we're going to this new unique entity ID sort of system. And organizations have to know their UEI. You can look that up, and we have links to all this. Important part of this, when you're going to your SAM.gov account, when you're registering, you need to list points of contact. I'll go into that as well in a little bit. Also, any questions that they can be submitted to cleanschoolbus@epa.gov, and they will be answered in a document that's published every 2 weeks. So this is very helpful if people have very sort of nuanced questions or any question that is novel. EPA will attempt to answer and publish that Q&A every 2 weeks. So it is very helpful to look through with a lot of the questions that we get. Again, application deadline is the 19th. I'll go a little more into the registration business here. So I did mention the unique entity identifier. There is, if you need help with the SAM.gov, you don't really reach out to EPA. You would reach out to the Federal Service Desk. They're going to be the most helpful in getting your SAM.gov account up and running. Again, the POC, the point of contacts that must be listed, require electronic business POC, an alternate, and also a government business POC and an alternate. These are the only points of contact that will be able to apply to the program, send in the application or look it up if something needs to be changed, and for other sort of information regarding a specific application, these are the only folks that will have access to it. So this is very important to do upfront, get that up, up and running, and don't wait until August 18th to get this information in. The application. So many of you have seen the website, epa.gov/clean-school-bus. All of this information is there. One thing I want to mention is this application user guide, which is basically it's a walkthrough of the entire application. The application's really quick. It's a few pages long. There's not that much data that's fillable forms that are asked for. There is an appendix in the application user guide, and the appendix actually lists, it's a printable list of all the required information that you need to submit on that digital application. So it's a really handy sort of bulleted list of each and every item that you need to submit on the application. So that's the application user guide, and it's appendix, I think it's B in there, if I'm not. Selection notification applications received by the deadline will be placed in a single ordered list using a random number generator. So this is again, it's a lottery process to ensure that a broad geographic distribution of funds. EPA will select at least one application per state or territory, provided there's at least one eligible application. Another thing is, no one state can get more than 10% of the funds, available funds for this year, so $500 million, whatever it is. And this is again meant to have an more equitable distribution of funds across the country. So something like California can't come in and gobble up a lot of the funds, no more than 10% per state. Applicants not selected by the lottery will remain in a random number order on a wait list. And again, EPA will basically get this list, and we'll go through, headquarters will go through, starting from those that request zero emission buses. If they meet the prioritization criteria, they'll go down that list. If there aren't any, then they'll go towards the clean school bus side of it. So starting with the zero emission side of the funding, and then they'll go down, and once the zero emission is filled, they'll go down to the pot of funds, 250 million, that's available under the clean school bus fund, which again includes CNG, propane, and zero emission. I know it sounds a little confusing, but it is a randomized lottery process. Applicants notified of this selection within 60 days. I did mention that earlier. So say, once you submit your application after August 19th, you'll be notified within 60 days. There is no rush to get in the application before August 19th. So you don't get preference if you get your application in, next week versus in another month. So just, make sure you get all your ducks in order, and then you have up until the 19th to submit your application, and that'll be, considered equally amongst every other application. Once EPA receives the application, you'll be notified. There'll be, electronic status update that's sent to the POCs. You'll be notified of the maximum amount of funds that have been reserved for you. And also instructions on proceeding forward. So it's going to be a fairly painless process. After receiving notification, you would go ahead and submit an online payment request form that includes the purchase order. So this is the idea here is, if school systems or transportation systems or districts don't have the funds, up front, they can go ahead and submit a payment request form. And all they need to do is, they need to prove that purchase order, send it into EPA, and with that payment request, and we'll get that money out within hopefully 60 days. Once selectees have received the new buses and eligible infrastructure and have replaced their old buses, they need to submit a closeout form. The closeout form must be submitted within 2 years of the date of the selection. So you essentially have 2 years up until October 2024 to take on the new bus and get rid of the old bus. So you can subsequently say you're not ready or you're working out some kinks with training and such, you can still use your old bus during this time. Your old bus, all the requirements have to be met by the closeout, by the end of October 2024, when you fill out this closeout form. So you can essentially, have that diesel bus as a backup while you get used to operating the new zero emission if you wish to. There's a little recap. Again, 500 million this year for both zero emission and clean school buses. Don't forget your SAM.gov. We really encourage folks to initiate discussions with your utilities. I know we had a webinar last week, 2 weeks ago, I forget what it was, with National Grid and some other utilities. This was a Northeast Diesel collaborative sponsored webinar. The recording of that is it's up on the website, and the webinar is pretty helpful, and what entities need to consider when working with their utilities. Again, you can go to that northeastdiesel.org and look up that recording, and the presentations are listed there as well. A lot of good information on the utility side. Deadline's the 19th. Sign up for the listserv. You all probably should be on that by now. Look at the program guide. It has really great information. It's not too long. It's very readable. And here is the contacts here. I want to, before I close out, I want to ask Rini if she's on to maybe start with a survey to get an idea of, what. Let me see if I can. Where is it? Yeah, I want to see if we can get a quick survey going.
Hey Gary, I'm here, and I will pull up those questions.
All right, I'm stopping presenting here, and hopefully you have access.
Alrighty. Yeah, so we have some poll questions to gauge interest in the CSB program, and I'm pulling up the first.
So the first one, are you looking to apply to the CSB program? If not, please let us know why in the chat. Yes, no, or undecided. Your feedback is very welcome. This is very much an iterative process that EPA is going through. I mean, it's a brand new program, so there's probably a lot of kinks to work out and a lot of suggestions that we can take from entities. So you can select the radio button too, if you're not selecting that, if you're not adding it in the chat as well. Is there another one there, Rini?
Yeah, I can go on to the next then. Okay, I'm closing the first one.
All right, look at this instantaneous. Well, that's encouraging. 44% are looking to apply to the program. We encourage more to join, but that's okay if you're undecided. I know there's a lot of information here, and there's a lot of sort of background work that needs to be done as well. So I think, Rini, do I close this or?
I'll pull up the next one.
Okay. All right. How many buses are you planning to apply for? As I mentioned, a school district can apply for up to 25 buses, or another entity can apply for up to 25 buses. There can only be one application per school district, so you can't submit multiple applications on behalf of one school district. So we'll give this a minute. Wow, 21 to 25, Robert. That's great. You can go ahead and share that, Rini.
Alrighty.
All right, so that sort of bookending this one, I know there's a lot of small school districts out there, so half are maybe requesting 1 to 5 buses, another half are requesting 21 to 25, which is really great. I mean, 4 responses, but maybe not statistically significant, but regardless, I think we're really encouraged to see these applications come in, either 1 or 5 or or in between up to 25. That's great. All right, what's the next one, Reed? Okay, what type of bus are you interested in? EV, CNG, or propane? We hope EV, but again, it's some districts aren't quite ready to make the switch completely to EV for various reasons. So CNG and propane are also part of this mix. And school districts can submit multiple types, so you can submit for EV and CNG, or a combination thereof as well. All right.
Okay.
What do you got?
Closing up that poll.
All right, look at that. EV is winning here. This is encouraging. This is what we want to see. So 73% going for EV, 18% maybe for CNG, and 9% for propane. So that's good.
All right.
All right.
This is our last poll question.
All right, what additional resources would be helpful for you under this program? So are you maybe looking for more assistance with fleet determinations? So, getting an idea of your fleet makeup, detailed information on that, or infrastructure assistance. Again, we think this is obviously a big part of this program. It's a very equally, if not important, part of it. So you can't have an electric bus without electricity charging it. So there are a lot of questions and needs here. So are these something you would be more interested in getting more information on, or assistance with your application and eligibility questions? Again, it's a fairly straightforward, pretty simple, all digital application, and questions can be asked. EPA at Clean School Bus at EPA.gov, or other. You can put in your chat, and I can't see the chat right now, unfortunately. Maybe I can here. Hang on. I haven't been following the chat too much, but yeah. So what do you got for the results there, Reed? Okay, yeah, I think that's what we were, well, and I was expecting anyway. I mean, the infrastructure side is definitely a big part of this. There's a lot to work out. Again, it pays to do the homework up front. Talk to your utilities now. So I guess I'll go through. Over half are requested, thinking that they need more assistance with infrastructure. And it was evenly split between assistance with fleet determination and assistance with the application and or eligibility. So again, that's this is very informative for us. We do recognize that the infrastructure piece is a big part of this. And I think that was it. Was that it?
Hey, Gary, before we go over to Q&A, I just wanted to mention a few things. And I work with Gary and Meany here on this program at the EPA Region 1 office. And I just wanted to reiterate a few things that we touched upon at the beginning of the hour, which is, ultimately, this is a program that we developed in whole cloth over the last number of months, and it's not necessarily going to be perfect this round. And as we go through the rebate process, if there's any feedback that you have for us on how we can improve this process, we really want this webinar to be the start of a dialogue where we actually kind of have ongoing communication with your school system, not through the end of this application period in the middle of August, but over the next 5 years, because ultimately, we want New England to be very well represented when it comes to claiming our share of the $5 billion that's available. Another thing I wanted to mention is, ultimately, yes, the application period is open until the 19th of August. And we have seen at times that as we get close to the end of the application periods, we see a huge influx of applications. And as much as we can work with you to get those applications in ahead of time, it might be better for just everybody's sanity, so to speak, just because the system has been developed for this program and computer systems are known to fail. So before we have folks from across the entire country trying to get their applications in on the 18th and the 19th of August, you know, we'd be happy to work with you one-on-one to make sure that we get these applications across the finish line much earlier than that. So that brings me to my next point, which is this is really the start of a dialogue between, you know, our office, Mass CEC, and your school districts, and we want to work with you to support you through this application process. That said, we are a really small unit, and we encourage you to reach out to us as soon as possible. And certainly there's some school systems that we'll be reaching out to, and we have already reached out to make sure that we are answering some of those questions before we, again, get inundated with requests for time in the month of August. So again, we just request that you start working with us early so that we can give you the adequate time and support to get these rebates in. And lastly, I'll mention that this first round of funding is going to be through a rebate program as opposed to a grant program. And that's important on our side in terms of, you know, rebates are actually an easier process to get through. There's less paperwork, there's less administrative burden. So, you know, Carl from Chelsea, I saw your message here in the chat saying that this is a very involved process and it's more difficult for some of the small school districts. We really encourage you to reach out to us. First off, if there's anything that needs to be clarified, we can work with you one-on-one to make sure we get the applications in. And I know that Jade Lou's here as well to help with that. But this rebate process is actually streamlined relative to a grant process, which is going to be a lot more involved. So with that, we'll leave it over to Gary again to kick off the Q&A. And if you don't get your question answered today, please feel free to reach out to any three of us on the email addresses that are shown on the slide right now, and we'll be happy to help you out one-on-one. Back to you, Gary.
Sean. Yeah, so this webinar is recorded, and also the slides will be shared. The slides are very similar to the ones that were already shared on the EPA's website, but you know, these have slightly more specific to Massachusetts that I put together here. But yeah, we will be sharing these. I want to open up the floor to questions. Please, you know, unmute your mic and ask a question, or you know, raise your hand if you want to do that. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions at this time. We have about 10 minutes left. So do we have any questions?
And one note for folks that are on the phone, to unmute yourselves, you press either *6 or the unmute button on your phone. If you were unmuted and we muted you on our end, you'll have to press *6 to be able to speak. Thanks.
Hey, Gary, we also have multiple questions in the chat box if you want to start going through those as well.
Okay, yeah, and Bobby has I will go through those, and we can go through those, but Bobby, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bobby from Chesapeake Goshen Regional School District, and we are one of the districts that are on that list. I have a question in regards to procurement law, I guess. So we just settled a contract with our current bus company for 3 years with an option to renew for 2. But the buses have to be used for our district for 5 years. I could see that as becoming a problem when we go out to bid again. Is there any information around that, or am I overthinking, or?
No, I think, yeah, I mean, I've heard this question as well. And I think EPA, you know, headquarters, and I think they're going to get a lot of these questions going forward. You know, it is written in the language that it must be, you know, serving that school district for 5 years. But again, what 70% of school districts in Massachusetts are contracted out. So we are aware that there are some, you know, difficulties or nuances with contract language, and how do you ensure that based on whatever contract you have, how do you ensure that it is, for 5 years? I don't know a direct answer offhand, other than I would ask on the helpline, the email address. I would ask that question, or it's probably going to be answered in the Q&A that's published every 2 weeks. And I can, if I can get more detailed information, I can talk to you directly, Bonnie, as well. Bobby,
okay, I'll put an email together. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just offer just one quick thing
Sure,
from Massachusetts perspective? So we've had a couple projects under some other funding programs need longer lease times. So like 10, 15 years. And there are like sort of municipal processes that you can, approval processes that you can go through to approve that lease. So for a city, it's a city council meeting. For towns, it's a town meeting. And I think for regional school districts, there's a different like meeting structure. So we haven't seen that happen, but I would think that there's a way that's outlined in Massachusetts statute that you can, like at the beginning of the procurement, have a longer lease term. And we're happy to talk more about that.
Great. Anil, is that how you pronounce Anil?
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call. Thank you for this webinar. Can you possibly put a document that has all the grants that we can combine? I know we cannot combine the federal grants, but state level, various things, maybe Volkswagen, some of that is available. You mentioned utilities. It would be nice to know what are all the things that can be combined in one document so that we can sort of put that on our radar to make sure that all that combined makes this whole thing even more attractive. I represent city of Lawrence, and we can see that the district definitely can use a lot of this help, and we are aggressively going to pursue this opportunity. So second question I have really is that will you be doing another webinar again for those who missed it, or is there any possible? I know you're going to keep the recording available, but will there be another webinar?
We might. I don't know if we'll have a webinar specific to Massachusetts, but we will have, other webinars, before the program closes. Also, head EPA, the national program, we will have webinars every couple weeks going forward, and those will be listed at, Clean School Bus, epa.gov/Clean School Bus. So keep on the lookout for that. Sign up for the listserv. Your first question, that's a tough one. I mean, there's no clearinghouse that we keep, for all the grant opportunities and or funding mechanisms. It's a lot of it is sort of on your side to identify those. We just require that you don't stack, use federal funds on top of federal funds. So it's, you have to know where the funds originated from to make sure that they're not, used for this Clean School Bus program if they're federal funds. There are the Volkswagen funds, that's all listed in the program guide as to what's eligible, and there's links to the consent decree with the Volkswagen settlement. Again, that was eligible mitigation action number 3, I believe it was, is eligible for funding under this program. Not the DERA option is not, which is DERA number 10 option is not under this program. But yeah, Jay, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's a resource that we've talked about creating at Mass CEC, and I'm definitely like taking notes on that feedback. And I think we'll be interested in doing that from like a state perspective. We are waiting for the utility, or the DPU rather, to approve the latest round of like utility programs. So we're not quite sure exactly what's going to be available for school districts, I think, until July. And so it'll be probably then that we'll be able to create a resource that will be longer lasting. I did also just want to mention that we are offering sort of like office hours on an ongoing basis. So you can ask your questions like that there, and I can just drop a link, and you should be able to just schedule through this link.
Thanks, Jade.
No problem.
And the last thing, Anil, if you're requesting kind of another webinar just for other folks within the city of Lawrence, if you'd like to set up a one-on-one meeting with us, we'd be happy to sit down and kind of give you more tailored information for your particular school district. I'd be more than happy to work with you.
Much appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. I just there's a link on the Clean School Bus website for the listserv. I just shared that on the chat as well. That question came in. Do we have another question? Trying to go through the chat here to see what the other, and Rini, I don't know if you saw questions that earlier that were asked or anyone. So Jade, I don't know if there's a question that says, has Mass CEC considered a state contract that is zero emissions that districts could contract under?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I dropped a link in the chat. So there is a heavy duty vehicle state contract that does have a couple of EV school bus models on it.
Okay, great, thanks. And I know you asked, I think, how much money is allocated to Massachusetts. There is not a set amount. It basically is dependent on what applications are received and what those technologies are asking for, zero emissions, and whether or not that school district is on the priority list. That'll sort of determine, and if they get chosen in the lottery, that'll determine how much money is actually received into Massachusetts. John, did you have something to say?
I just saw a comment here from John Desmond in terms of, convincing leadership to take advantage of this opportunity, and they're finding a bit of skepticism and indifference. Again, that's something perhaps where EPA can support, by talking directly to the folks that are making these funding decisions in your school district. And again, if you're able to reach out to us, what we are doing on the regional level is compiling that information and putting it up actually to the national level, where folks from the EPA headquarters office are reaching out to possibly facilitate some of these conversations and address some of the obstacles to EV adoption and applications to this process. So John, if you're looking for support from us, again, we're 100% on board. Just please reach out to us.
All right, 2 minutes here. Any other questions? All right, everyone got pretty quiet here. I don't know if we had more in the chat. I was trying to go through that. I think we covered most of them.
There's one question here from Bernard Shaw. It says, how is delivery being set up with such a large number of vehicles from Bluebird, etc.? Who do independent contractors who can assist with the delivery to the school buses get into contact with? For the first part of your question, Bernard, from the EPA national office, we've been in contact with the large manufacturers of EV school buses, and they're well aware that this opportunity is coming down the line and that there's going to be significant demand upon fixed set of resources. And they've been pulled into this conversation early, and they're aware that this is going to be a 5-year funding opportunity that they need to cycle up for. The second part of your question, if you wouldn't mind taking yourself off of mute, I'm afraid I just don't understand it properly.
Yeah, so hello, good morning. So pretty much, I know that the supply chain with certified CDL drivers and independently owned contractors with their own authority and things like that are becoming less rare due to the cost of fuel and, they were changing, economy. So at my company, we actually have, and, we're actually very established right now, and we can facilitate such delivery of, the vehicles that, are going to be needed. And during the upcoming year, we want to satisfy the school districts with getting the vehicles in online to meet the standards so people can, show off and see that the vehicles are being delivered under the EPA program and that each school district will get their vehicles in a good manner of time. Thank you.
So Bernard, I recommend that you reach out to, the large EV school bus manufacturers to work with them directly to facilitate delivery of the buses. The one thing I will mention is that for any delivery fees to be even be part of the conversation of what's reimbursable under this program. It would most certainly have to be invoiced on the invoice that we receive and that we're processing on the EPA end. So perhaps this is a conversation that we need to continue offline, but to be honest with you, it's not an issue of kind of run by the national office just yet. So if you want to reach out to, again, Gary Reinier or myself, we'll make sure that we raise this up at the national level and get you a better response.
Good thing, John. I appreciate it. I have you guys like emails on the picture. I'll be reaching out today as well through the email.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. And unfortunately, we're coming up to the end of the hour here. I do want to thank everyone for joining today. A lot of great questions were asked. These slides will be shared and also posted on northeastdiesel.org for future reference. Also, check out the Clean School Bus website, epa.gov/clean school bus. That has all the information. Read the program guide and reach out to your utilities. Again, thanks a lot for joining today, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jade.